Welcome to Slicing Through the Noise, a leader's story, the podcast that uncovers real stories behind impactful leadership. Join us as we explore how leaders cut through the chaos, master powerful listening, and build cultures of accountability and vision. Whether you're a seasonal executive or an emerging leader, this is your space to learn, grow, and lead with integrity. Let's slice through the noise together. Welcome, Justin, to Slicing Through the Noise. So our guest today is Justin Casey, CEO of Adventure Operations. And we have a long history together, and watching how you lead, what you do, and what makes it work. And what have you learned along the way? Today, I just want to have a yarn with you about what is it taken to be able to cause some of the things that you've caused. What did you have to give up? What did you have to do more of? So I'd like to just start with something that I know about you. So
is this going to be dangerous or not dangerous?
It's not dangerous.
All right, cool.
Not dangerous. It'd be really cool.
Okay, we can always edit it anyway. So fire away.
Yeah, fire away. I think the funniest story that I have about you is you fail accounting 101.
Yes,
and then
true.
You joke about flunking general accounting at summer school and then joining Foster's as an accountant. Why not?
Yep.
And what did that early stumble teach you about humility and resilience as you did all of that? And then that wonderful cathartic suit burning, like, I'm out of here, I've had enough of this, after a decade of being inside of big corporate, and you go, nah, this ain't me. And what triggered that moment?
Yeah.
And how did you then reset your leadership philosophy? So maybe start with that story.
Yeah, there's a lot in there. There's a lot to unpack.
Yes.
If you ask my now wife, who at the time girlfriend, how did I do that, and how did I get out of flunking and getting into summer school and flunking that? I remember telling her, I think it was semester 2, year 2, might have been year 3, I can't recall, that I was going up against the advisory board to hold my position in university. And I always thought, well, I'm not sure how I'm going to do this. So thankfully, a good friend was also on the head of the college studies board. We played rugby together, and so I managed to be able to get myself out of that and lock in for another semester, and managed to get through it. And then eventually, ultimately, then talking myself into an accounting job. And to be honest, it was probably I did a HR marketing major, of which I've never used either of them in a vocational sense. However, one of the brightest things that, good luck, not good management, was actually ending up in accounting, because what it did give me, and we talk about this thin slicing and being able to get to decisions really quickly, is, and I say this a lot to anybody that comes and certainly through our organisation or anybody that I talk to, and I said, if you can have a really core functional understanding of finance, you'll go a long way. Now, not all finance people can be CEOs, and there's plenty of debate around that.
Yeah.
But ultimately, I think what it did give me, it gave me a really good understanding of the value chain.
Yes.
Because ultimately, finance is the outcome of all the stuff that happens beforehand. So all the things you do right, wrong, and indifferent. And so what that did was effectively give me this sort of really nice sort of grounding and experience in where does everything start, stop, and finish in, and ultimately what are all the points that influence it along the way. And so I spent a good 6 years in finance, and sort of ending as a finance director role inside of a corporate, and across that journey I did that both at a plant level, so working inside of a plant, a manufacturing facility, all the way through to a sort of a corporate lens as well. And so it just gave me a really good understanding of where people can and can't lead you to, and what's right and wrong.
Yes.
And that was great. And then sort of that then morphed into more of a commercial based finance role, which was more around sort of understanding data and trends and demographics and things like Nielsen and JP Morgan and those types of things and Roy Morgan and those types of stats.
Yes.
And then which then ultimately led into strategy and sort of having been through that sort of that raft of roles, ultimately where it got me to was I enjoy working in a corporate environment. It's great and it's amazing for your fundamental learning. However, there's too many layers in my view, and in my experience there was, and to get shit done, I just wanted less of that and I wanted to be able to do more of that. And ultimately I ended up in a role where it was about that. It was about just fixing stuff and I got a real passion for sort of understanding and pulling stuff apart and putting it back together and then got an opportunity to step out of that corporate life into something where, you know, we invested our own money and had a bit more skin in the game. And I think that, that cathartic process of going through whilst I loved it, I had a great time, it was amazing and the experience and friends and the like was awesome.
Yeah.
That ability to actually really, really influence at speed was the thing that really frustrated me.
Yeah, because in the large corporates, it takes 14 people to make a decision to buy a pen.
Yeah.
It's like, hello.
Yeah, it can, and I think for me, you know, just to be able to cut faster and cut cleaner and cut quicker was something that I really enjoyed. And even in corporate, you know, we a couple of the roles I did were all around turnaround style processes, and so. That certainly, that was an itch that was like, oh, this feels really good. This feels like something I feel like I'm good at and I like doing, as opposed to a very functional role that might be, you know, marketing or finance or whatever. I had the ability to look across the breadth of sort of discipline and go, I can see a lot of these things happening really quickly and in real time, and how would I change them and how can I change them? And big business, that was always a challenge. Yeah.
Well, there's because people will guard their position in larger organisations, whereas in a medium-sized business, it takes a team to make it work.
It does, yeah, and you get that genuine, that ability to be collaborative, and you try and draw people in, which absolutely works, and the textbooks will tell you it does work. But in a smaller SME, an organisation, you can actually have a much greater impact than that because you can get your arms around everybody and anybody can participate in it. You know, ultimately there's always a lead function, right? So it doesn't matter how big your organisation or how small it is, you know, there's a CFO and if Greg says it's this, then it's that, right? But I'm happy to participate in the debate, but ultimately someone has to be responsible for it. And I think that for me, having an SME or working in an SME environment, gives you the ability to be really clear around the lead participate function, but you also get to have a perspective and learn a lot more. And I think ultimately that's one of the things that I love about an SME is you actually get to learn more about the bits that you don't or haven't been tertiary trained in.
Yeah.
I think in my experience in this current role, you know, I came in knowing very little around sort of the banking component to how and the financing component. And this has allowed me to sort of unlock an amazing, amount of knowledge on that, principally by actually being involved in it, but secondly, having somebody who's really experienced in it and learning from, which in a large organisation I would never have that exposure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's a wonderful opportunity in those SME spaces to learn and to grow so that you can actually think. One of the things that you just had me trigger, like one of the things I know about you is you're extraordinarily good at deciding where strategically you're going to move and why. And one of the things that I learned a little bit, I certainly don't have the breadth of appreciation that you have, is that your experience in accounting and the numbers, because strategy comes out of the numbers. So let's just talk about, like, from Coleman Brands to Adventure Operations, rebranding and portfolio building. So that's what you did with Coleman and through mergers and all kinds of things. And just before you transitioned into your current position at Adventure Operations, are there any learnings that you took from that experience that has stuck with you and went, I will or I won't ever have that happen again?
Yeah, I think clearly good people is the start. Like that's
that's your thing.
It's almost like a no brainer, right? So you can assemble a squad, a team, whether it be pick a sporting reference or even in business. It's no different, to be honest. And I think that the ability for you to bring that sort of team together and have that trust, where you're just allowing them to do what they do and giving them all the elbow room. And my role is just to provoke, right? It's to provoke and challenge and, poke and prod and, not dissimilar to what you do for, in your role, as part of a development, process. So I think, always making sure that you've got a really tight team around you that can actually get it done.
Yeah.
And I think, again, whilst my prior role was run like an SME, it was part of a $6 billion US business, so it had its guardrails too. But equally, I think knowing what those guardrails were, and then being able to work in that environment and see things and be able to bring things to the executive team to draw back or whatever it might be, just bringing those into this environment, ultimately making decisions and just getting on with it.
Yeah,
and particularly when you often you're challenged with making decisions, you may or may not have all the information, and that ability to go, what, I've got enough that I know what I'm going to do, and let's just do it.
Yep.
As opposed to going another step further, and ultimately maybe getting to the same decision, but missing that trend or missing that shift in the market because of that.
Yep. So it's a big, like Adventure Operations, you fundamentally are a distribution network. And how do you decide strategically? What underpins the success and the strategy for Adventure Operations? Because you've taken it from here to here.
Yeah.
How the heck?
Yeah, I think, ultimately coming in off the back of, a couple of acquisitions, which were two sort of separate family-owned businesses with very different cultures, and sort of trying to merge those. I think, fundamentally the first part was just doing a bit of sort of 101 work, which was, sort of, I'll use the word corporatizing, but I'll use that just in a sense of, two family-owned businesses run quite differently at an SME level, but together quite a large organisation, and so it requires some discipline around that. And I think first things first was getting that baseline discipline right. I think any organisation, you can't try and attempt anything strategically or anything where you want to try and move something forward if the core fundamental and the foundation of the business isn't correct. And so, I loosely explain it to a lot of people on take the P&L and take the balance sheet and go top to bottom. Yeah. And we did something in every single line of that. And so, whether it was the structure of the sales organisation, even the leadership team, we didn't have HR, representation. We didn't have policies and procedures that were across all parts of the organisation.
So one of the first things I know that you did was bring in HR into that organisation. Do you want to say a little bit about why HR to you is like your left hand?
Yeah. Like I said, I did that. I did a HR degree, and I genuinely, I generally value the function it has, because ultimately people make it happen, right? So if you really aren't invested in HR, then you're not really invested in the fact that you're trying to do something with your people, whether that be development or just functioning at a higher level so you can actually get on with it. And I think for me, having, and trying to find a commercial HR director is really critical.
It's like a needle in a haystack,
few and far between, I must say, yeah. However, what I would say is that when you find a good one, that you can see the difference, quite quickly. And so, I think for us, that's sort of, and that's core to building foundation of an organisation, which is ultimately the team, which the team individually and drive the culture and all the way that the way it steps itself out. I think, however, pre-doing anything strategically or wanting to do anything else, for example, a really good example is, we've always wanted to grow out our direct-to-consumer business. Now, stepping into the business, we had two operating ERP systems, one written in DOS, one just, a decade after that.
Yeah.
So there's no way I can launch a high-functioning D2C business when the core ERP isn't going to support it. So, So strategically, while you're building the foundation out, because you need the core foundation to build from, equally we know where we want to take it. So, okay, well, we want to build this into this obviously as the brand owner, you want to be the voice to the market and want to lead the consumer through that journey. And whilst we've been doing that at a wholesale level for many, many decades, and it's still a really important part of our business, ultimately no one will talk to your consumer better than you because you're the brand owner.
Yes.
It is yours. It's your baby, right? So, so sort of coming in and going, hey, this is a strategic initiative we'd love to put in place. However, forget about that because there's 5 other things you need to do before you can even consider that. And
what do you think happens? I mean, like that's strategically thinking, actually. Like I do this before I go and do anything with messing with the strategy. Yeah. How do you view leaders that come in and just want to go to that task and go to the strategy, but they don't have that other piece in play? What do you think they haven't considered and what they haven't learned?
I just think it's really understanding what pressure that will put on your organisation if you don't do it correctly. Even something simple as, and I said this yesterday to someone in my team. I said, so we're talking about doing something particular down in the warehouse, and I said, do you think that they could actually? Do you think we can do it? And the answer was yes, we can do it. System-wise, we could, but I'm like, no. If the guy on the floor who's picking that, do you think he can actually pick that, or she in this case, because we've got either down in the shed? Do you think they can actually pick it efficiently and put it where it needs to go to actually get to the consumer? And then, subsequent to that, they go down and have a look at the product and look at the, talk to the warehouse manager. I just think if you jump at something too fast without actually really knowing all the parts of the value chain, down to the point where you're like, okay, if they're down at the pick face, the WMS says to pick that and pick this, but then they've got to go and put that other one in a box, but there's one already there that you can put. It's a small thing, but it's a really big thing.
It's time.
Yeah. And if you don't understand the value chain and you don't understand how the organisation functions at all levels, and I'm not saying you have to be ridiculously intimate with every single part of the business, but if you can thin slice over the top of that, you can get to a much better outcome way faster.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I would say if you want to go straight for that, good for you, but you better make sure that all the bits in between can work, because otherwise it'll just stop somewhere.
And people just feel disheartened, I think.
Yeah, and then it starts to cost, right? Okay, oh God, now we've got to rewrite the program, or we've got to redo this, or we've got to shift that, or we've got to do something. There's always something that's going to happen that's going to cost, whether that be people or cash.
Yeah. So one of the things, like you scale with purpose is the words that I would use. And Adventure Operation runs with multiple DCs.
Yep.
Yeah. And offices in 5 countries.
Yeah.
Yet remain at under 150 people.
Yeah.
How do you preserve the entrepreneurial speed at which you grow and while adding structure at the same time? Yeah. How do you make that work?
Well, I think you've got to be really clear on what's important. So the initiative structure that you have. Yeah. So we have sort of 4 strategic pillars which never change and haven't changed since I've been there. But effectively every year you work on a different set of initiatives that you're trying to shift them forward. And whether that be supply chain based, whether it be customer or footprint based, whether it be making sure the business model that you're building is correct for that, or whether it be around your brands and the equity that you're putting into your brand group. Just getting leaner on initiative. Like as I've started 6 years ago, if I looked at the volume of initiatives we had, it was it was 2 pages worth because there was so much foundation work to do. Now, it wasn't difficult work to do, and it was very granular, so you could tick it off quite easily. And then as we've migrated to sort of, we're literally, what are we now, May something or other. So we're writing strat for next year. I like to look 12 months. I'm not a 5-year strategy guy because I just think you get lost in looking too far forward rather than on this. So I typically be max 2 years sort of forward looking, because there's always something to do inside of the 12. And so for us, we keep it super lean. as far as the initiatives, and they're big chunks of work, and therefore then we revisit the fourth strategic pillar, which is realigning our business model. And so if I've got something around a particular, so if it's expansion into the US, then that's where the energy goes, you know, and we're really unapologetic about not everybody gets to play in that, because everybody's got to
say more about that, because I know that you go, no, these people are playing in this arena.
Well, I think you know, it's like, you know, well, you know, I want to be involved in everything, and it's like, well, you know, you absolutes don't work, so you can't be. But secondarily to it, I think the fact that everybody's actually got a day job. Like there's day jobs to do, and then there's strategy to do, and some of that includes, some of your day job including moving your strategy forward, but some doesn't. Some just still includes, I've just got to answer the phone and tell this guy, it's ringing me from a store in Dubbo, that the price for that product is $84.12. Now, there's plenty of other things we've put in place that he could do that himself. However, sometimes I do that, and whilst that's not overly strategic, in our business, it's about moving the vision forward every time you do something. And so ours is all around connecting people to their adventure. And so if that means there's a consumer standing in front of this guy in Dubbo who's asking to buy a particular product he doesn't have on his shelf, and he needs to know what the cost of that is, so they can ultimately go and go to a kid's sporting match, or, you know, go to a market on the weekend, or go camping, or do whatever. Yeah. Ultimately, answering that question will move that forward. Yeah. Now, it doesn't feel very strategic in the moment, or very very big in the moment, but ultimately it is. And I think often I talk to the customer service guys around that. There's things that you guys do that may not seem significant, but they are so more significant than you think. And for us, you know, we're unapologetic that you don't get to play in the strat space every day, but you get to do your day job, and ultimately that day job should move that vision forward. And all it's got to do is make it slightly better than the day before. It's not about completing it. Yes. Because it never completes. Like it's infinite, right? Because whether I'm here or you're there or whatever, that doesn't, like, we're important, but we're not. Don't say we're not important.
We're not that important.
I want a job
in the
still.
Scheme of things.
Yeah, but we're not. But we can, you know, the game can't be replaced, but we can, right? And so I think, you know, you've got to have some level of unapologetic nature to your businesses. So whether that's the people you have inside of it, the money that gets invested to certain things, because ultimately the market trends move one way or the other, right? There's a large scale sort of movement towards, you know, digital consumption, right? Whether that be, you know, purchase consumption or actual just content consumption. So, you know, the likes of Amazon, which weren't around 10 years ago, you know, in this country at least, you know, and now it becomes the largest marketplace in the country, right? So the you know, that would tell me, you know, that, you know, highly likely there's going to be trends moving in where people are or aren't consuming goods, and ultimately what does that mean to your business? And you've got to keep abreast of that. And so, yeah, not everybody can play in the strat. They just can't. It's
and yet every action they take ensures that the strat actually happens.
Yeah. It just, you know, like if there's, you know, expansion into the US, you know, there's some people that can't, right? Yeah, like, and it sounds super exciting, and so some people have a very heavy investment in it. Others have very little to none, and that's just okay. Like, it's just the way it works. But ultimately, we still need you to do your day job and do your day job really well, you know. And yeah,
I mean, that whole thing about, you know, one of the things that you're known for is a hands-off accountability leadership style rather than a hands-on. So I remember years ago you said to me, Jennifer, there's guardrails and then there's guide rails.
Yeah.
And you're known for that hands-off approach and an emphasis on personal responsibility.
Yeah,
could you say something more about that? Because I know that that's why your people will do whatever, because you don't micromanage them.
Yeah, you know, and you know, when you typically ask people, do you like to be micromanaged? They typically say no. It's not to say that some people don't need managing, right?
Some people need micromanaging. I mean, I've had people on my team that I know you can't leave them to their own devices because nothing will happen inside of the device.
Yeah. And, the mantra that I have, particularly when I walk into an organisation, as I did 6 years ago here, was really around, so these are the types of things I stand for. This is how I lead, and this is my expectation. My expectation is you own your patch, you be very responsible for it, and if someone, owes you something or you need something, you hold them to account so as that doesn't break your link, right? And that's not to say it doesn't happen, and we all break responsibility, at most parts during the day, right?
Yes.
I think the most important part is always around, how that cleanup process and how quickly you can clean up where you have broken it, and so and then what's next with it, right? So and for me, it's just around those conversations and making sure that if you can't meet it, then get to it early, call it early, have the conversation, and then move that forward around what are we doing next.
So that allows me to lead you into some of those robust conversations that you've had, the hard calls. Yeah. And can you give us an example of a tough call that you took too long to make and the price you've paid for that?
Ultimately, typically these always relate to people.
Yeah.
And there's other things as well around, and oh God, pick a number. Yeah. But I think one of the things, hard conversations aren't typically more difficult for me personally.
Yes.
And I've gotten better at them, and they're still uncomfortable and all the things that come with them.
That doesn't change, I don't think.
No, I don't think so. No, and I've performance managed, a number of people throughout my career, and been performance managed myself. Where you've got to lean in and out of tough conversations, whether you're on the receiving end or the giving end, and so. But I think for me, there's certain things that I would have loved to. So over time over again, I would love to have cut faster and cut deeper. Because ultimately where it's going, and it's that. And I've got a real trigger in me, which my wife knows as well. If I'm not sleeping well, like if I'm up at 2:30 or 3, it's because there's something going on. The deepest sleep you'll have, or deepest sleep I have, is the day that I've done something about something that I've been sitting on for too long.
Yes.
And it is the most deepest, amazingest sleep. And
it's like you've given yourself permission to do what you know is right.
Yeah, and ultimately, and that's equally as part why it's great to have a great leadership team around you, because they're the ones that should be saying to you, that they should be pushing you on it, right?
Yeah. So if you're the CEO or the leader of a team, a great team will come to you and say, "I don't think so."
Yeah, they'll support you through it and all the rest of it. But it's it's really typically it's people, right? Or it's significant change, right? So obviously as I took these two businesses over, we have multiple DCs around the country. I wished I'd have, knowing now, I wished I'd have cut faster and cut deeper on the actual outcome that we're at the moment, because it was the right outcome. I convinced myself and I talked myself into an interim outcome thinking it was going to get better. But ultimately, my view, I actually knew what I knew, and I took an option, which was, so if there's like, don't do anything and do what you should do, I did the one in the middle.
Yeah.
And often they're the ones you talk yourself, and you can talk yourself into anything.
And you sleep over them.
Yeah, and I did. And I lost sleep over it for a good bloody, couple of years. But you can talk yourself into anything, particularly when it comes difficult.
Yeah. So I think that's a piece of gold that you've just given leaders there. Notice what you talk yourself into.
Yeah.
Because whatever you're talking yourself into, you're going to pay.
Yeah. And inevitably you do, right? So it means that, you end up having to step into that role and pick it up in the interim, or actually you end up holding it for the whole time.
You did it anyway.
Yeah. And that was the thing. It was like you were leading it anyway. You were leading that way anyway.
Yeah.
So why wouldn't you? It's almost you're happy to put yourself through the pain, but you won't somebody else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like one of the things I remember in a conversation that we had with your team when you said to your team that business transformation happens after personal transformation.
Yes. Yep.
So you want to
Always.
talk more about that?
Yeah. Which I think, it sort of, leads to that conversation around when we got back to sort of team being the most important part of how you do it, and particularly making sure you've got a core group inside of that team. And I think, like when I stepped into this business 6 years ago, there was still two distinct cultures sitting inside of the business. And so, luckily for me, I wasn't from one of them, which was beneficial in my view, because obviously I didn't particularly care about either of them because they didn't matter. There was nothing that mattered to me inside of them apart from the people, which I felt had really good intentions and really wanted to move forward. They just needed a new purpose to move it forward. And so I got on a path of resetting that and setting up, what that means to do that. And then ultimately from there, it was really sort of, then working on the people, because, I think ultimately if you've got the right core group of DNA, then it's easier then to switch the transformation of the business part on. Like there were some things that were easy to do that I could just, I could captain's call them and change them straight away, right? This is what we're doing. No debate required. But equally, as we've moved forward, I'm asking the team to do more of them, doing more of the transformation work now, because they're capable of doing it and they understand it. They understand what the strat looks like. Yeah, so that you can't transform them, or the business results will come post people transformation. Yeah.
They come after you do that work.
Yeah.
So I'm interested in what are some of the rituals, your leadership labs, the peer feedback loops that you have, the fact that you've turned your leaders into coaches, like they actually coach the business as to how it looks and what it looks like. And, like understanding their impact.
Yeah.
Say more about what you've done to actually create a group of people like that.
Yeah, I think the first thing which I talked about also on that sort of first day that I took over this business was around transparency. Yeah. And I think, even whilst I'll talk in a second around the things that we've done for the team and the team do, the very, very first thing for me is just around transparency. So is that I'll give you all the information. Now, whether you choose to listen or not, it's really not up to me. Yeah. What you can't do to me is come to me and say you didn't know. Yeah. I think that level of sort of open, sort of transparent, I think they call it now, like some sort of shocking transparency or something, or brutal transparency. Some sort of thing like that. And I just giggle to myself. I'm like, God.
Giggle.
It's like, geez, really?
Just
be
tell
transparent.
The truth.
Just be transparent, right? And so... And, and I'm also conscious that there's most things you can, like, 99% of the times I can tell the guys what's going on. If we're in the middle of acquisition or something, there's some things you can't, right?
Yes.
But
there are things that are confidential information versus what's the truth and what can I be transparent about?
Yeah, exactly. And so for us, the transparency part starts the first bit, which is cool. You're all going to see it. And so therefore, if you see it, you'll understand, you'll get a sense of why. Right, and then as you sort of jettison that down into the team and particularly the leadership team, that level of transparency doesn't stop. So so they get warts and all, board, the whole lot. They're not in board, but they'll get all the warts and all of what's going on and where it looks like, and so that when I make a decision or I have a comment, they know why, right? And so then they pick that up and then they take that level down, and so that transparency is around. How much of a conversation you're having often enough in an open forum where you need to, where you can talk to things, whether it be a pain point, whether it be trying to accelerate something, whether it be performance, and there's the usual things we do, performance review and all that sort of stuff. We do use other tools around that now, which we've started to do less on the KPI performance management, and more around the fun test and some of the stuff that we've worked together on around and using that, because the conversation, it drives a conversation versus I've ticked this box, or I've built this product, or I've done something else. It's like, do you think you get, how's your degree of challenge, do you get what you want, right?
Yeah.
And equally it gives you an insight onto, because this is them telling us about them. So if you want a 10 of challenge and we're giving you a 5, then we're underutilizing you. Or if you want a 5 and I'm giving you a 10, you're probably not the right person for that role,
yes.
or this organisation.
That's a great conversation because now you can talk about it.
Yeah, and because otherwise if you put it into a formal KPI document or review document, you're hoping that they'll bring that level of insight, which they never will.
Yeah.
However, if you work on, different types of scales and different types of questions, then you can start this type of conversation, which is the pro, right? Which is so, you want an 8 degree of challenge and we give you 5. What do you think's missing? Like, what would you love to have that you don't have now? Simple question, right?
Simple.
And then open it up, it comes. I'd love to learn more about the warehouse. Great, cool. Hey, Dave, someone's coming down. Like it's actually really easy to do something with.
Because you've got something specific that you can actually have a conversation about.
Yeah.
And that's the power. So one of the things that I know is your mantra is developing people first.
Yep. Yeah.
And that as you've done that and people own their impact, you get the result that you want.
Yeah, like it all pays itself back in kind. And I think ultimately, we all have a view on what we're put in place to do as a CEO. But I think for me, and the question sometimes comes, what are you most proud of, and those types of things, right? I think for me, the greatest, the thing that I enjoy the most is when someone leaves the organisation and goes somewhere else, and you get a phone call 2 years later, or I see someone at a function, or you run past them at the airport, or I'm like, I loved our time there. It was great. And, some of the things I learned were awesome. And ultimately your role is to send someone out of your organisation to somewhere else in better shape than they walked into it.
So if you're talking to leaders, that's a salient piece of gold for them. People will leave your business.
Yeah, I hope they do, right?
Yeah.
No one can stay now. I can't. So if I can't, like, why would I expect them to? And there's plenty of people that have been there, 20 plus years, which is great. And every organisation has all types of players, right? But I think for me is that ultimately, our role is to develop and coach and mentor and skill. And if someone can come through our organisation and we get a great run out of them and they've developed and we can move them through, and equally we have a flat structure, and I like a flat structure. So there's really not that many levels, which is a challenge in an SME.
Yeah.
However, what it does mean is it means the breadth of what they can see is better.
What about like in an SME, the great thing is that you actually often get to do things that you would never do in a big organisation.
Yeah.
Do you want to say more about that in leading people into that?
Yeah.
That's the opportunity of working inside of SMEs.
Yeah, it is, because particularly, from a project point of view or even on a daily basis, because you're all in the same office or typically in the same office, you'll walk past things. What are you looking at there? What are you playing with there? What are you hearing there? You just get an opportunity to participate in a bit more. Even acronyms and things like, countless times you go into a new organisation and there's acronyms and you're like, oh God, that's right. This is that, or that is this. And we do a lot of that around educating people on, what is EBITDA, like why is it important? Why do we talk to it? Why is it a metric we use a lot? Why does the board want to know about it? So I think, that ability to sort of deepen your knowledge. And again, if I think about my career, one of the greatest benefits I got, particularly early on in the Foster's days, was really around being able to work across so much of it, and because you could just see, and hear and smell and be curious about all types of things. And, mind you, you've got to have a nice base level of curiosity, because curiosity is key, right? Like it's a really important skill in anybody developing themselves.
If anyone was listening and they're looking at bolting on, products or brands into their business, what are some of the thinking that you do that actually has that work?
Yeah.
Because I've seen you bolt in things really well.
Yeah. I think it's a core competencies of ours, and we talk about it internally, given the strategy, acquisitions really as a key part of our strategic initiative and has been for the last few years, in fact. and having a scaled asset like we do, and it's really important that there's a series of criteria that we sort of recruit against when we're looking at individual products or brands or companies. And so, it's really interesting because I've been in this space quite heavily in the last couple of years, particularly because there's so many more founder-led businesses now. Like one of the things that e-commerce has allowed is it's allowed people to build out businesses from nothing, right? And so we've got a set of criteria we typically use, and often it can be sort of top-lined by what's the revenue, right? So, one of the things that even if you're bolting a very small business in or a very large business, often the process is the same.
Yeah.
So, do I need to set up the SKUs in our system? Do I need to put them into the warehouse? Whether it's, 10 small SKUs or 10 large SKUs that generate large or small revenue, it's the same amount of work. So for us, you're sort of there's a certain hurdle that it makes sense to do that. And then there's some sort of operational moats we like to see. So if there's any sort of IP, or any type of sort of patent, that's awesome. If it's got an existing direct-to-consumer footprint, that's great because obviously it offers a larger margin portion than say a traditional wholesale business does. If it's got an international footprint, absolutely that really helps also. And then the most important one for us is we have to be able to tuck it into our scaled asset. Because what I don't need to do is to buy another warehouse or another entire sales team or another entire something or other. It needs to be able to fit. And then ultimately wrapping around a whole lot of that, it needs to be an adjacent category. So I can't go and buy, if we're in a leisure business, I can't go and buy a car insurance business. I don't know why I want to, but anyway,
you're kind of do that
so
one.
If your budget direct, stay out. But and so for us, it's sort of those are the types of things, and then we have a very systematic process of integration, and so we have a template that we use, which I designed many years ago, and it's basically a value chain on a template. It's not it's not a formal program. It's nothing that I've done. It's just something I built out myself, and I know if I follow it, nothing gets missed. And then I've coached the organisation on how to do it.
Yeah. And
we've integrated and we've merged and we've shut things down and we've opened things up and we've done all sorts of things in the last 6 years, and it's the same process. So the guys that are involved in it have seen it before. It's only if we've got new employees would we have to take them back through, but we just get straight into it. It follows the same process, and so after identification and then successful sort of negotiation, then it just drops straight into the process, and the process sorts itself out. And there's nothing that can come like if I look at the significant pieces of work we've done using this process, we just don't miss.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So processes create an opportunity for you to just step through things rather than trying to figure your way through.
Yeah.
Like, what the heck?
Yeah. And in most part, the question's been asked and answered, or it's been at least been asked and considered. Maybe we don't have the answer yet, but it's not going to be a new question as you go and flick a switch to turn something on and someone goes, oh, we didn't think of that. That's very, very infrequently has that happened. And so, and it's good fun. Like acquisition is good fun, and rolling businesses in and building scale's great. And it's still a really key part of what we're doing now, and trying to find, appropriate businesses, internationally even to bolt in and sort of move our business forward.
So I'm interested. We had a conversation, I remember, at the beginning of the pandemic, and you had a boom during that period, and then you had post versus post-pandemic reality.
Yep.
And how have you hedged against that inevitable plateau? What are the moves that you made that had the business continue to move forward?
Yeah, like it's there's been some crazy things happening in this last 6 years. I would have just loved a nice 6-year run into this business and get it to where we think it needs to be. And so, and I'm conscious there was a lot of businesses that didn't do well in COVID. And right, obviously in our business, no one could travel, and so a lot of people chose to take up the leisure pursuit, whether it be camping or whatever it might have been, outdoor activity, and we benefited from that. Ultimately, it was always going to be a tailwind, right? So we knew at a point in time, and again, prediction, which is a big part of being a leader, we could predict it was going to reopen, and ultimately it was all going to come back off. And so, inside of that, there was a whole bunch of conflicting, sort of issues inside the chain, whether it be the, shipping, or whether it be, securing of inventory, whether it was, pricing and whatever else happened, what happened to organizations post-pandemic. Some didn't make it through it, some did. And so, for us, really just sort of trying to sit down and predict where we felt the market was going to go. And I think what we tried to continue our focus of energy on was stick to the discipline of how we run our business, stick to the initiatives that we think are important. And then ultimately there was a whole bunch of things we knew we had no control over. So, you can't control currency. I couldn't control that containers would go from $1,000 to 15,000. I couldn't control the fact that lead times went from 2.5 months to 18 months. All those things were all outside our control. But what we could do is inside of that, we knew what we had to do and what we had to continue to not do. And so, we obviously came off that. The country stabilised, certainly our industry stabilised, but then there was this 18-month catch up of all the things that happened. And some industries took longer than others. I know the bike guys took a bit longer to cleanse the hangover from COVID. We certainly did in the outdoor space, which was good. But I think, just making sure you focus on the controllables. That was really the mantra for my guys, which was
what can you control?
Yeah, let's keep going. Let's keep working on our, on the implementation of our D2C. Let's keep getting our US strategy ready to go. All these things were all still big buckets of work that we were still working on. So as when time came, because we predicted that it was going to come good, it was going to equalise and even out, that, we weren't going to then start then. It was okay, well, let's wait till it equalise, then start. It was, let's do this concurrently, right? Because it's not going to go away or, whatever the things were that we couldn't control aren't going to go away. So let's just keep punching through what we think is important to us and what we believe will set us up for success. And it has, after that sort of, a few years ago when it bottomed out, we've really pegged up and jumped nicely and continued to really build on it.
So what I think is important when you're leading is to know to keep your foot on the pedal. Like you didn't take your foot off the pedal.
Yeah.
You might not have done the acceleration that you wanted. And what you did do is keep it moving.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing. You've got to balance that. The feathering, the feathering of the brake and the accelerator at any time. And so for us, if you went full brake, you probably wouldn't have made it through. To be honest, you really wouldn't. You would have, And there's a number of businesses that went close, and there was some others that didn't, even in our space. And so, for us, trying to make sure you've got. And inside of that, there's a lot going on, right? So people can often get distracted by the things they can't control. So it's, whilst you're still keeping the momentum up, making sure they're okay. It's okay. It's okay to keep moving forward. And, but what about this? It's it's fine. Cool.
Keep going.
The good news is we get to make that decision as an organisation. And so, just sort of, whilst you're feathering, sort of keeping that momentum up, making sure the team are all okay and, you got all the right things in place. You work from home and there's this and there's that and all these things that didn't exist and never existed in my time growing up. You
can stay home and work.
Yeah,
visit the fridge too often.
Yeah, I know. And, that's another whole podcast. And so, but I think that ability to make sure that you're not breaking momentum, because I think it's easy to get caught up, similar to the tariff thing, right? So same thing.
Get all lost in it.
We've got a business in the US we launched 2 years ago, which is growing really nicely.
I want you to talk about Kakadu.
Yeah.
I love the name.
Yeah.
In the US.
Yeah. So we obviously launched that, 2.5 years ago. Launched it with a very core, really tight range of products, all Australian sort of style camping, because the Americans sort of haven't really worked out some parts of it, and then sort of in the overlanding space, they're still trailing behind the Australians as sort of the founders of that type of camping. And so launched that, doing really well, doubling, really nicely, starting to go into some retail spaces and e-com spaces, which is doing really good. And then Trump pulls the one. Well, it was 45 and then it was 145, and I think we ended up paying 187% on a product we landed 3 weeks ago.
Ouch!
Because it shipped after the last round, and obviously yesterday he's changed it now to 30. Still don't even know what the 30 means yet, so we're still trying to get our hands around that. And so, but inside of that, we've got to make plays, right? So we had some finished goods sitting over in China, and so we held those because I didn't want to ship it under 187%, but at 30, it's better than 187. It's not where I'd like it to be, but ultimately I believe and I predict that it's either I don't believe it's going to go back up and it may come down. So I'm like, go, ship now. And so this ability to sort of, keep your eye on what's important and predicting, the prediction I have is they're going to settle at a percentage less than 30, more than the previous tax he put in the 17, but less than 30. And so I can do the math on that now and go, I believe this is as much as it's going to cost us.
Yeah. Talk more about prediction, like that whole thing that a leader's main job is to be able to predict from people to product to outcomes to what may or may not happen.
Yeah.
Talk about that.
I think that's ultimately what we get paid to do. Like as leaders, you've got to be able to, you got to have an eye on what's happening today, but equally you got to have an eye on what that means and ultimately what you're going to do further down the line. And I think, I can see some things at the moment that are, like for example, we're doing some acquisition work at the moment in a particular industry because I believe, it's probably at the bottom of its rung. And I think it's probably, in my view, the probabilities it's only got up, right? And so, why wouldn't you look at this or look at that? And I'm like, well, I believe that, right? Now, and it may not be true, right? But the reality is my experience would tell me, and prediction is, and leadership is much better when you have experience. You've worn the battle scars, right? Yeah. And equally, I go back to the opening comment around the fact that I've been across the value chain in a fairly substantial way. It allows me to predict faster, better, more knowledgeably. Yeah. And the fact I've worn some battle scars along the way, like I haven't always done the right thing.
You've made mistakes.
I've got plenty of those, yeah. And so I think the ability to be able to use prediction, and to your point, whether it be people or whatever, go back to where we talked about what keeps you up at night. Like, you know where that's going to go with this person, and you don't do anything about it. And great, then you spend the next 6 months sleeping restlessly, or do something about it and move it on, and then ultimately move the business forward because you predict exactly what's going to happen is what it is, and it's I think it's interesting when you ask, when people ask you, what are the things that what are the key things to be as a leader, or what do you value as a leader, or what do you look for? Prediction for me is a really big one, because it's well,
leadership in one word, prediction.
Yeah,
can you predict what's going to happen?
Yeah, it doesn't necessarily make it right.
No,
but it just means, do I believe in a higher probability than not?
Yeah,
so prediction and probability this year were big sort of key themes for my sales team. Is that what's the probability if you did this, that it would be a north of 50% upward swing. And if you predict that business isn't going to do any better than it did this year, or it's going to do worse, then why would we invest any more?
Yes.
And that's the same for all businesses, I think.
Although, like you say that, what do you think has leaders not actually use their experience to predict the future? Now, no one knows exactly what's going to happen. Who could have predicted COVID? No one.
Yeah.
Right? And coming out of it, we learn lessons.
Yeah.
So what's your message to leaders about use what you know?
Yeah.
Then back yourself.
Yeah, I think it's that second part of that comment there, Jennifer, around the backing yourself. Like, because like I said, we can talk ourselves into amazing things. Like no one can talk me into anything better than me. Like I can absolutely talk my way out of anything. You should do this. Oh, no, I can't because of, what about this? And absolutely, for me, it's at any time when I haven't used my prediction, I've been the one to talk myself out of it. Very rarely has it been somebody else.
Yeah.
And so that's that ability to go, actually, just go, like step. That sort of, it's that. What's going to happen? What the risk of pushing through? Like what's going to happen in the emotion.
Like one of the things I know about you love ambiguity and it energizes you.
Yeah,
why?
I just think ultimately, it's never going to be completely ambiguous to you. Your experience is going to give you, I remember this, and when that happens, it triggers, right? And it might trigger bad as well as good. And if it triggers bad, then that's when you're going to talk yourself out of it. And people are often the major one because it's like, oh God, if I do that, then I'm going to have to pick up something, and then I'm going to have to recruit for it, and then I'm going to have to do this, and then I'm going to have to talk to all these people, and you're like, oh God, well, why don't we read, let's find another way for it, right? But I think, for me that the prediction I don't think is ever the problem. I think it's the what does it trigger when, because we've all lived that experience in some way, or something, and you're like, oh God, here we go again.
Yep.
And you go, where am I going to take this? Am I actually going to, we're doing this, or oh no, I can find a way out of this, and then you get the LT and you've already got your story. So you tell the leadership team and they go, oh yeah, that sounds okay,
And you've talked them into that one as well.
I've talked them into it as well, right? And it's versus, well, I don't know about that, and thankfully my guys are really good at, well, yeah, I don't know. And then you're like, damn it, they got me, right? Yeah. Then you're like, okay, now I've got to do something. So
building that kind of team around you means that you're less likely
to get away with it.
Yeah. So here's another thing for you. What daily habits, mentors, mindsets keep you sharp when the path isn't clear?
Yeah. Exercise is really critical for me. I think, a lot of people talk about it, but it's sort of there's a structure to the exercise and doing it. I don't enjoy it. In fact, I said to one of the ladies from she walked out of the gym this morning, I said, God, I hate this, but I just do it.
Yes.
And I feel way better for it after I do it, but I actually don't enjoy it, whereas my wife is completely the opposite. She just can't fathom that I don't enjoy exercising. And so
there's much more exciting things to do.
Yeah, I know, absolutely.
I don't like exercise. I do it because if I don't, I'm stuck.
So I think, that helps me just center, and whether that be swimming or the ocean or whether it be physical exercise, that's really good. And then I just think it's just playing the game every day. If I was good enough to ever play AFL, which I never was, there's a reason why these guys train consistently every day, because you're in the game every day, right? So for me, it's just playing the game every day and then hoping that things get pushed in front of you that have to make you, work harder at it. Okay, I haven't seen this before, or because, X amount of decades into your career, you've probably seen most things. And in fact,
unless you lived under a rock.
And in fact, you have, right? The biggest thing I think at the moment is the generational part, and we spoke about it earlier, pre-podcast around, I know what generation I grew up in, I know my parents' generation, and obviously I've got children now who are coming into another generation, and, what was important to us or what was important to me as I was going through this stage in my career, and what's important to, a new generation, and it's just balancing all that, because at any point in time you've always got, 3, maybe 4 generations in your workforce, right? And it's like, but what I do know is there's less of the baby boomer and less of me in the workforce, or probably not less of me yet, but we were the smallest generation.
Yeah.
And so, and then you got all of these new generations coming through, and so, staying sharp on the things, on the actual work that you see is easy, but it's the people part. That's what keeps me on my toes.
Yeah.
Work from home or RDOs or this or that, and
someone saved me from all of this.
My pet's sick, so I need the pet leave, and I need this leave, and it's I've
you
got
need
this,
the
and
pet leave.
Well, there's just so much more that it's that you never asked that question, and you just felt embarrassed to, and that's not right. It just is what it was, right?
Yeah.
And so I think for me, that's the big part for me. So playing the game every day, and that's why I love the office, because I get to play the game every day. If I'm a work from home and I've got a generation who works from home, I don't know how to play the game because I'm not in it. Yeah. So
you can't play, it's a little bit like you can't play football, tennis or anything unless you're on the court.
Unless you're actually in it, right? So I can talk to it, I can, we can converse about it, I can read about it, I can chat GPT it, but I can't play it. And this is a game. We are in an infinite game, your work life, right? And I can only control my work life. And so, and my work life has been an infinite game because it hasn't stopped. Now, it may stop at some point in time, but that'll be when I die. I can guarantee you right now. And so, but between now and then, I'm playing at least 5 days a week and at least 7:30 till 6 o'clock you're playing that game, right? And so you're in the game more than you're not. And it's no different when you come home either. And that's why this premise of sort of work-life thing, you're just in the game of life, right?
Yeah.
And
this is part of it.
And this is part of it, right? You know, and I've got the kids are going to be there whether I'm, whatever time it is now. My kids are still doing their thing, and so I'm a father still now. I'm not Mr. CEO now. And then when I walk in the front door, I'm now father. I'm just the guy in the game.
I love that's a piece of gold, because there's this whole conversation. I know we've had this a few times about work-life balance, and that's actually a misnomer, and it's misdirecting information for people. No, you're playing a game, and this is the whole game.
Yeah, life's the game.
Life's the game,
Yeah.
and work actually happens to be a big part of that game.
Yeah.
So get some, get your juice out of it, get everything that you can out of it.
Yeah.
I love that whole thing that you talk about is this is the game. It's forever until I stop my last breath.
Yep.
And why are we even talking about which part of the game I'm in right now?
Yeah, because you're swinging in and out of it on a second by second basis. You're getting pulled from home and pulled from work and pulled from your own ambitions and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
And it just is what it is. And ultimately the good part about it, in most part, you're responsible for all of your game, right? And whatever happens inside that game, and again, I won't say 100% because things do happen, but in most part in life and in this game, you are responsible for it.
Yeah.
And you can choose when something else that you're not responsible comes at you, you can choose to either hold your line on it, or you be taken over by that, whatever that is.
Yeah.
And that's the really interesting part.
Well, I think one of, you had me think, it's not what happens to us that actually decides how we play the game. It's what we do with what happened to us.
Yeah.
And, this is the game, let's play.
Yeah.
And good, bad, indifferent, who knows?
Yeah, I'm proud of a bunch of things I've done, and I'm not proud of a bunch of things I've done, but by default they're done, right? So it's like, cool, then what do I, and it's this prediction. So if something else presents itself another way, again, and I've lived that and I've worn some scar for it, why would I should be better to know than not to do that again. But ultimately it's just me anyway. I get to make a decision on that. And
so how about this? In closing, for our listeners who want to take a distressed brand or a stagnant team and make them raw, like really make something out of it, what's the first diagnostic question that they should ask on day one? What's the thing they need to look at and ask the question about?
I think, obviously, there's a big part around people, but I think, so firstly, it'll be the leadership of it'll be the leadership. Like ultimately, it starts and stops at the leadership, and so I still think for me, like the transparency is a really interesting thing. So how willing are you to have the most important conversation with anyone in that business, and what's stopping you? So for me, I think that's
How willing and what's stopping?
Yeah.
Those are the two questions you want to ask, because they'll be about the product, about the people. It doesn't matter what.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, thank you, Justin Casey.
Thank you, Jennifer. Very nice to see you again.
For being on our podcast.
Excellent.
Fabulous conversation. I've loved it. I mean, we've had so many conversations over many years, and I just love it.
Yep.
I always walk away from a conversation with you going, I need to get my head around that one.
Yep.
So
Likewise.
thank you.
Yep. Excellent. Thanks, Jennifer.
Well, that wraps up today's episode. If you enjoyed our conversation and want to keep the momentum going, make sure you hit the subscribe button so you never miss the latest insights and stories from extraordinary leaders. We appreciate you tuning in and can't wait to share more with you soon. Thanks for listening.